Hello everybody! Alright, next video, let's go. So I just did the tabletop RPG video. You can see I still have these right here. I mean, you can probably pretty easily see what things are during what recording session due to my outfit, how the background slightly changed and my makeup. I decided to mess around with it this time. Some more experimental stuff, although you can't really see that far away. I don't know, makeup's weird for me. But, I want to follow up on that tabletop RPG video. This is my first immediate sequel video with a video on communication. So this is part of why I think that these kinds of things are so important to queer liberation. Because they help you practice communication. So, I'm going to be talking a lot about Sleepaway. I have my character stuff over here. I was playing Ropes Keeper with a one-shot, which is actually kind of a two-shot with some of my friends. So, I'm going to be talking about that, I'm going to be talking about this. So, let's start out. What is this? This is the X card. Alright. This is the card that says no. This is what's called a safety tool in tabletop RPGs. It's very important. I think all sessions should have some sort of safety tools with them to be inclusive towards people with different backgrounds. Because, yeah, a lot of people say, oh, I can just handle this, I can handle that. Most of them are lying, let's be honest. There's at least one topic everybody doesn't want to deal with. Well, any individual has at least one topic they don't want to deal with. They're usually pretty graphic and traumatizing topics. I'm not going to bring them up in the spirit of inclusivity. But, yeah. So safety tools are important. So what's the X card? So the X card is a tool. I'm going to link it in the description. This is made by, I do not know who, but yeah, there's a link for it. It's very, very important. I'm going to keep on saying it's important because it is. But the X card is a card that everybody should have at the table. You can just, I just took an index card and drew an X on it. And it's a card that whenever something comes up that you do not want to deal with right now, you don't want to have this part of your game, you don't want to have part of your conversation, you bring up this card. You either say, you put the card up, it's like this. Maybe you can just, I'm gonna not put it on the floor because you won't be able to see it. Maybe if it's on the table, just be like, or something. However you bring it up, you bring it up. And then whenever somebody says X, then no questions asked, you have to drop whatever they X'd. Now, this gets more in depth with the communication, and this can be very sensitive. If it's something that you're X-carding, it might be something that you really, really, really don't want to deal with. To use a personal example, one that I know people can't harass me with because it's so specific and so, how to put it. My point is, this is a real example for me, but it's not one I'm afraid of putting out there. Tornadoes. Sometimes, if I'm in a very specific mindset, tornadoes are a topic I do not want to deal with. And so I would X-card that. But let's say we're walking in a field, okay? And then there's a thunderstorm, and there's a bunch of tornadoes, and we need to find shelter. And then I X-card this. So, first of all, if let's say that was literally what somebody said, whether it's the game master or another player in a game masterless game, what am I X-carding? Well, I need to explain to them that I'm X-carding tornadoes. I don't need to tell them why I'm X-carding tornadoes, but I need to explain that I'm X-carding tornadoes. No tornadoes. And we have to just go on from that. So that example right there, that's an easy enough one. You can just be like, okay, no tornadoes, it's just a nasty thunderstorm, we need to get inside. Easy. Done. We fixed it, we moved on. Sometimes it's a bit more involved. So, same exact situation. Let's say characters are moving up on this field, and then a tornado is coming down from like the god of wind that we're fighting for some reason, and we need to deal with this tornado. Then I X card the tornado. Okay, this is harder. I still do not owe anyone an explanation for why I want to X card the tornado. No explanation needed at all. But now we need to work more towards how are we going to deal with this, because the tornado is like a major part of what's going on right now. So if this is a DM's game, this can like really throw a wrench into what the DM was doing, which is part of why it's also important to bring these things up beforehand. If I were doing a game of D&D, the DM is having us fighting a wind god, it's probably good for me to say, hey, I'm going to ahead of time X card tornadoes. So when you're preparing, don't deal with that. But sometimes that's not possible for one reason or another. So now I have to work with them as much as reasonably possible. How do we work around this? Okay. Well, maybe you could just be like, instead of tornadoes, since it's a field, you could just make it straight line winds. Just really, really nasty gusts that'll blow you away. Maybe that's good enough for me, maybe it's not. For me, I know it would be good enough because of some of the other specifics, but for someone else it might not be. So this communication is really key. And so that's a form of safety for these kinds of games. It's really important. I'm going to keep on saying it's really important because it is really important. Not enough people do it. You guys better get out your X cards or something. There's others. X card is the most well-known that I've seen. Now, so that's communication for difficult topics. So how do we communicate for other things? So some of these games have stuff built in. So let me go to the back. Now, in this game, when you do moves, it's a lot more loosely defined than a game like D&D. And we have strong, regular, and weak moves here. And then I have these questions. I'm going to read these questions out loud. And these are questions for the player to ask another player. So, my character is Gertrude. I'm Apple. These are not questions, to use that one shot as an example, these are not questions for Gertrude to ask the character Jacob. These are questions for the player Apple to ask the player Kevin, who was playing Jacob. And so there's, where does your character feel safe? What happens if my character opens up to yours? What is your character hiding from mine? How is your character jealous of mine? So those are some pretty in-depth questions. And these are really, really, really nice, just general communication tools. Things to think about in general in any kind of relationship. But I really, really like Sleepaway with these tools because what this does in playing these kinds of games, they give you a practice of, or they get you to practice empathy, I think is the word. I know there's empathy and there's sympathy, and I keep on getting them mixed up. I'm sorry, but I do. These are an opportunity to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So you can role play, it's a role-playing game, you can role play as somebody who has some sort of conflict with somebody else, some point in their personal relationship where things are breaking down. And it's a safe area. Of course, the X card. You need the X. If you need to X something, you X something. Maybe you had some really, really awful personal breakup with somebody over... I'm going to use a really esoteric example that in the past would have had an issue with me. Maybe I had a breakup over taunting in fighting games. I know I tweeted about that recently, but maybe I had some sort of nasty relationship breakup, I don't mean boyfriend, girlfriend, I just mean any kind of relationship, then maybe you can X card that. Sometimes things are just too raw. I'm going to keep on bringing this up because it should be kept being brought up. It's very, very important. Get your X cards. But these are safe areas to explore these different kinds of relationships. Let me see. Is anything that's really good? So, how is your character jealous of mine? So let's say I'm playing the Ropes Keeper, someone who keeps the ropes course, if you know what that is. If you don't know what it is, think of it more evident as an advanced jungle gym with a bunch of ropes and some trees. I'm playing the Ropes Keeper. My friend was playing the Lifeguard. Maybe they're jealous because they only protect people, but they don't get to facilitate something that's fun. Like they're there when people are upset and in trouble, and people only ever see them when they're upset and in trouble. Whereas the Ropes Keeper might be more somebody who it's like, oh cool, you're doing this thing to help us out. Alright, good job. Maybe you are viewed in more of a positive light that way. I'm just thinking out loud. And you can explore those dynamics, how to deal with jealousy, how do people view different kinds of people, how do you view them? Maybe you're the lifeguard and you realize you viewed lifeguards this way, and now you want to explore if everybody viewed lifeguards this way, how would they feel? Maybe they feel bad about it. Maybe what can you do? Explore that headspace to make them feel better. I know I was going for communication, but communication relationships is kind of the same thing. And again, relationships as in all relationships, not necessarily sexual ones. Or intimate ones. Oh, I guess intimate is... Yeah, let's just say sexual. Because you can have an intimate, that's not physically intimate, relationship with a bunch of people. I would describe a lot of people's relationship with their family as an intimate relationship, but it's a different kind of intimacy, of course. So that's something to explore. To go back to that, maybe you view lifeguard this way, you realize this might be a problem. Explore how would they feel about that, and how maybe could you change your behavior so that you're not viewing them in this possibly negative way. Maybe it's not a problem. That's what the exploration is for. Another kind of exploration I'm doing in my Ironsworn character is they have a really good relationship with a band of raiders who go around killing and stealing for food and shelter and stuff. They don't make anything. They, as Game of Thrones puts it with the Iron Islands, they pay the iron price for everything. They just rape and pillage, and they just kill and steal. My character has a really good relationship with these people. My character sees himself as a good person. How are they going to reconcile that? And how are they going to talk to people who do this, that they're supposedly friends with, but who do these terrible things? Maybe these things aren't so terrible in certain contexts. I mean, I think rape's pretty terrible in a lot of contexts, but it's just like stealing things and killing people. Maybe there's some specific context. I mean, war happens all the time, and a lot of times there are just explicit bad guys in war, and killing the bad guys in war isn't always the worst thing. So you have to think about that. And you can easily analogize that. Yeah, raiders don't exist. Like, people don't go on Viking boats and storm the shores and then go kidnap monks from temples into slavery like they did hundreds of years ago. They don't do that anymore. Not explicitly. But you might be in a situation where someone is in a very exploitative position. Maybe it's somebody who owns a business who is purposefully putting down their employees, paying them as little as possible, just being the worst boss, and making life really terrible for them. And this is a person you have a good relationship with and you're kind of friends with, but they do these terrible things. How are you going to reconcile that? I know so many people just want to say, just stop being friends with them. Life's more complicated than that. Sometimes you have to be friends with them. Maybe that person you're friends with, maybe that's your father, and you don't have a job right now, and you're dependent on him to survive. You probably want to have a decent relationship with your father. It's complicated sometimes. And so that's why these games give you a really good, safe area to explore these ideas. And that's that. I'm about 5 minutes short of where I wanted to be. I'm kind of done with this topic, so let me do a short version of another topic that's related still with these tabletop RPGs. One issue I find a lot of times with these tabletop RPGs is that people like to meme. So it might be, oh, this person's pouring their heart out because their daughter was kidnapped by the dragon and they really want their daughter back, and the dragon's probably going to eat her after burning her alive, and everything's terrible. And he's like pouring his heart out, this NPC played by the DM, and then some players are just kind of like going in the background like, I'm gonna go fight the dragon. Like, I don't know, being just kind of like that, being memey, messing around. It's not appropriate. So these type of situations also bring up really good exercises into trying to talk to people when they're not exactly doing what you want. Sometimes if someone doesn't do what you want, if you're playing a fighting game and someone picks Talim, we all hate Talim. I mean, come on, who doesn't hate Talim? If someone picks Talim, you don't want them to pick Talim, but you gotta kind of hold that. Talim's part of the game. Just, if you can't deal with that, maybe you shouldn't be playing Soul Calibur. But there are other times where you are telling the story about the man who's so upset that their daughter was kidnapped by the dragon, and your friends are just going like, meme. Yeah, I'm gonna go to WrestleMania. I'm gonna suplex the dragon, which is something that's happened in some of my games. Things like that. And it's not a meme session. I mean, if you want to play meme D&D, go play meme DMD. Have fun. I mean, that's half of what this game is. It's meme. It's not so much meme, but it's very fan servicey, because it's so much about very deliberately including modern pop culture into stuff and having fun with it. Yeah, sometimes that's more appropriate, but even in that game, it might not be. So this brings up an opportunity where you can say, hey, guys, can we take this more seriously? You know, we're trying to tell this story. We're trying to have this experience. I mean, I'm just saying that this is how I would say it to my friends. Your friends, you might say it differently, because you know your friends better than I know your friends. You know, tailor things to what's appropriate. But you say, hey, guys, this isn't very appropriate right now. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. And try to talk about it. Actually, to make a really explicit example, we were playing Sleepaway. And I should have said something at the time. I talked to them about it afterwards, and we had a nice understanding about it. But we're playing Sleepaway, and I'm describing what the Lindworm, this eldritch, awful monster, is doing. Where birds are just dropping from the sky. Like they're flying, and all of a sudden they're dead, and they just start falling from the sky. Normally it would be a kind of haunting experience if you're just kind of standing underneath a bunch of birds, and all of a sudden they just stop moving and just fall, and it starts raining birds around you. That's gross, that's scary, that's nerve-wracking. But I described that situation, and then one of the characters just decided to take the bird over to the fire pit, start roasting it, start eating the birds, just having a fun time with it. That's not really appropriate. for a horror situation. And I should have said to him, hey, we're trying to do this thing where we're doing a horror game, maybe dealing with some more brutal stuff. Could you not meme about it? Could you not make these jokes about it? Because these are it's supposed to be a scary situation, and you're just making it into a fun situation about roasting dead sparrows. Maybe you shouldn't do that. I had that conversation with him later, and it all worked out pretty well. Oh yeah, actually, a really explicit thing is when we were playing Sleepaway. This is the second time, because we kind of reset the session the second time we did it, because we didn't know exactly what we were doing the first time. We're playing Sleepaway. I'm reading out a part, because you're supposed to read a lot of this stuff a lot to get into the mood. And as I'm reading stuff around, we're playing on Tabletop Simulator, and my friend's just flicking things around. Ow. That one's a little heavy. He's just flicking things around, just messing around. And I was like, hey, can you please stop flicking these things? We're trying to get into the mood of this. It's a bit more serious. Yeah, these things are really good ways to practice decent communication, letting your thoughts be heard, your wants and needs, and trying to reconcile that. Maybe he's bored. Maybe they don't want to play. Maybe maybe you could be reading it in a better way. You can read something like, okay. You can read something like, the ropes keeper tends to the ropes course, the structure at the heart of the woods. They are an enigmatic staff member. Or you can read it like, the ropes keeper tends to the ropes course, the structure at the heart of the woods. They are an enigmatic staff member, one who prefers the company of the wooden beams and tall trees to the presence of other staff, or, heavens forbid, actual campers. You see? Maybe they're bored. And, I mean, it's still kind of rude to just start flicking things if you're bored. That's more on them. But, talk to them. Figure things out. I think these are really, really good ways to explore that stuff.